Wrought iron, such as seen in these railings outside St Mary's Cathedral in Sydney, is a great subject for the technique of drawing the effective detail rather than the actual detail. And you've probably seen this technique applied to a number of different subjects in other videos. But the first principle of this technique is we need to establish an area of the subject with more detail, with more care being taken. This will be the clue that the brain will latch on when we look at our drawing to get a strong and immediate sense of what it's looking at, and therefore make some presumptions about all the parts of the detail that we don't actually draw. Now, in this drawing, in this subject, we have a motif, we have a panel here as part of a gateway set into a fence. And it's fundamentally the motifs that are used in the fence, but simply on a larger scale. So it's an ideal section to just take a little more care for, although still a rather perilous event drawing freehand in ink. But at the moment, I'm really just wanting to get the leading edge, the thin edge established, and the width I'll in most cases apply a bit later. This is still going to be a fairly gestural sketch, but if I were drawing what was behind the fence, then this fence really becomes a necessary part of the drawing. And so I'm taking some care to position things. Now, the important thing, well, there's several important things in this, but the strong sense of perspective that we get is really important with the horizontal lines. And so when we come to draw them, it's very important we get those angles correct. Now, secondly, the foreshortening also connected with the perspective. The foreshortening is also really important because the fence is moving away from us at a very steep angle, and so the widths start to compress more and more as we go down the fence as it gets further away from us. So we'll need to pay particular attention to the foreshortening. Now, it's important with the perspective that we not just use it to align the horizontal rails that we see, but also the various elements of this design that I'm drawing now that align horizontally. And so I'm working out at what point I need to put, say, where these two curves join on the left-hand side and the point where they join on the right-hand side, they need to line up according to the overall perspective of the scene. So now I'm just trying to work out the bits that come on top. This wasn't probably my most successful part of the drawing, just with observation. I should have dropped the left-hand section a bit and raised the right-hand section. But never mind. One of the advantages of a drawing with as much detail as this is that all those details do tend to overwhelm any relatively minor errors. There are a few places in this where a few pieces of the metal I've decided are missing, and that took me a lot of time trying to work out what was happening or why there didn't seem to be anything at all. So once we get this panel finished, I then realize that this panel is curving towards me and it curves away from that left-hand pole in the other direction. We don't actually see much of it because of the angle we're looking at it from. We only see a very small section of it side on, so to speak. But again, if we can work out what we're seeing, it really makes it easier for us to then draw it, to work out how we're going to represent it and to draw it most credibly. So I put a few now widths on things. Because the widths are mostly in shadow. Still trying to work out what's happening down in the lower section of this panel. And that decorative piece on top is really annoying me, and probably even slightly more so because the horizontal line that it sits on slopes down too much, which I've only just noticed for the first time. So now I'm working out the angles. And if you notice, I'm not rushing to draw lines at this point because I haven't worked out how far along it's going to be. One of the really common mistakes with a drawing such as this is to extend the fence too far, extend the wall moving away from us too far, and then we can't compress the details the way we need to, and we get either a distortion of a building shape or a window or other architectural elements sizing in relation to each other, or we just get something that looks all over the place. So I've worked out where to put this side-on view of this same panel that's curving away from us in the other direction. And again, just need to make sure that the parts on the left that align with the parts on the right of that left-hand post, that they do approximately align up. And now I've got the serious business of the rest of the fence. So getting that first larger pole in positioned is important, but I need to work out how far down to draw it. So I'm just working out where the base is going to be now. Notice that I'm doing dots because I don't know really for sure how far to the left I'm going to extend the horizontal lines. And I've just worked out that there's quite a bit now out of the picture that's been cut off by this camera angle. So I'm just starting to add a bit of that because it is going to need to, I think, come in to help us realise that that's not the bottom of the fence. And so now, get this pole done, a lovely terrible line. We'll try and adjust it and hide it by the end. And so there's more now working out lines. And as I said, not taking them too far, and I can see that line's at really too steep an angle as well. And you can see what I'm doing here now is I'm trying to work out though how much foreshortening affects what we see. So how far to the left the fence actually goes. Now, would you have put it there or would you have put it out further? And you can see what I'm doing. I'm actually finding the divisions and then working out exactly where they are. And I hope you can notice that as we go from right to left, they get thinner and thinner as the effect of foreshortening takes place. And each of those needs to be divided a second time during the course of drawing this fence. And so again, we don't place the center line right in the center, we place it slightly to the further side to continue the foreshortening effect. Wow, that line is so far out of line that I really feel like, well, I'm blushing. Fortunately, I don't think it's, in this case, the sort of mistaken angle that's going to make a big impact. But it also doesn't line up so well with the top horizontal section in the right-hand side. Well, I can do nothing about it now. So, but the important thing is to make sure that these lines I'm working out now create the fan pattern that we need. And now I'm putting them in place. And then we get the fun of now really creating the effect inside these panels of the same motif that we've already drawn on a much larger scale. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking across horizontally, and within each section, if you like, within each rectangle, there are still bands where more detail appears, all lined up horizontally, and other parts where there's less detail, and therefore there are gaps. So we want to create the visual appearance of those gaps, whatever lines we draw. And then we can see that some of the lines are clearly circles, or at least curved lines, and other ones are straight. And again, we want to try and create the effect of curved lines where there are curved lines and straighter lines where there are straighter lines. And you can see I've added some perspective guide dots to help me line up where various parts of the pattern end, because I just have found that's the best way to make it happen. And I do these circles in this section and then realize that each of those was divided in two. No, I'm about to do this, about to make another mistake. And that's with this row that's underneath this one. I put a circle in each of them when in fact they were each divided in two, and a circle was in each of those halves. And now I've realized what I've done, and I'm trying to work out what will I do. Well, I just put a division down the center, and I thought, no, I think there's enough lines in there for me to get away with just working over it. And as long as the effect of the roundness, the curves of the circles are happening, then that's going to be okay. And now we have a section which isn't really in anything that we've done so far. And so it's a bit hard with this angle of viewing to work out exactly what's happening with it. So I'm just trying to get the feel of the direction, the main direction of the lines, and then how they connect and what sort of pattern they create. And then underneath we have more circles in the boxes, and then we have a section where there's just the boxes, which creates a simpler effect. Where we just see through the fence, and the dark shadows behind make that really obvious. So this could be drawn using negative space. It would probably be slightly more challenging, and I would draw it with a much lighter pen. This is a 0.2mm pen. I'd probably use a 0.1 if I were to be wanting to define the fence more by negative space, more by the shadows behind than by the actual lines. This took me 30 minutes in real time to draw, so you're seeing this in approximately double time. And now I have these sections on top, and again it's important that they follow the right perspective angles. Putting them on top of a line that definitely doesn't. But I think, fortunately for me, this is a pattern, has enough detail, is a structure that does to a degree hide as much as could be hoped for a wrong perspective angle, or certainly one as in the wrong direction as this one. So you can see at all stages of this, I'm trying to look at my reference and to see what's the overall effect of the pattern. Where do bits line up, creating a certain visual impact of more detail or less detail? I want to, in my drawing, replicate that, because it's not as if anyone can work out the pattern of the wrought iron by looking at my drawing, but they can certainly tell that there is one. They can tell that it's a repeated pattern. They can tell that some parts of the pattern have more metalwork concentrated in it than others. And they can get a sense of the fence moving away because of the way the pattern compresses as it moves further away. That the panels become narrower and narrower. And now I realise I hadn't actually put the edge on perhaps the most important the width rather. I hadn't put the width on, perhaps the most important section to put the width on. So I'm just looking to see if there's anything else to do. So I put the width on these sections, and that emphasizes that section nicely, I think. And is that it? I think it is. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Well, what did you think? Wrought iron, fancy ironwork can be a challenge if we love to draw architecture, but the technique of drawing the effect of the detail, not the detail, works really well for this. So why not give it a go? You'll find this reference on my channel community page. So make a copy and get to it. But look, whatever you draw and however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.